Hey guys, Roxbox90 here with another card a day in the life of an EDH commander, but we're going to do something a little different today because it's going to be a lot of cards. So the thing is that M13 is pretty much, we're wrapping up the M13 spoiler, but I kind of wanted to put my initial thoughts out there. So I picked up and looked at I looked at the entire spoiler, and I picked out a bunch of cards that I want to talk about that either are going to be really good or maybe not as good as people think, or are interesting in relation to EDH only. I did not want to discuss cards that are reprints, so there are no reprints in this video. These are only the new cards from M13, and of course, let me know what you guys think, and let me know if you agree with me or not, or have any comments. So the first card I want to talk about was Faith's Reward. It's 3 and a white for an instant. Return to the battlefield all permanent cards in your graveyard that put from the battlefield this turn. So this card I think is really nice in EDH because it's instant speed, and it acts as a Ghost Away sort of thing. For people who know, Ghost Away is same sort of thing, but for 3 mana it blinks your permanents from the field on the turn. And there was a new card from I think Dark Ascension that was kind of similar but cost a lot more. Target player blinks all their stuff. So Faith's Reward I think is really nice because it's permanence. So if someone does Massive Wrath, someone obliterates, whatever, some sort of massive board extinction card, Faith's Reward prevents that. So I think that's interesting. I still think that of course Ghostway is a better card if you're going to run it because it's you can blink all the abilities, so it doesn't just save the stuff. But I think Faith's Reward's a decent choice. It's a pretty decent card, I think. Then the next card I want to talk about is Archaeomancer. So this is 2 and 2 blue for a 1/2 creature that when it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. So Archaeomancer is pretty much a better Mnemonic Wall. Mnemonic Wall is an old card that was a 5 mana for an 0/4 wall that did the same thing. So I think the Archaeomancer is probably better. Obviously an 0/4 is nice because you can jump block generals that don't have immediate evasion. But given that it costs 1 more, I think Archaeomancer is a better card because it's cheaper to play for the same cost. So if anything, it's a common and it's another option for that sort of thing if that's what you want to do. Then Encrust is one I thought was interesting. It's 1 and 2 blue, enchants an artifact or a creature. Enchanted permanent doesn't untap during its control's untap step, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So obviously it's not the best. Faith's Fetters is better because Faith Fetters gains you life and it does it on a permanent, pretty much the same thing. But I still think it's nice to have Encrust because it locks down artifacts or creatures. Not all permanents, but I think it's still pretty decent. So it's a nice cheap option for that sort of thing, and I thought it was kind of interesting. The next card, of course, is Omniscience. Omniscience is literally Omniscience. It's so flavorful. Such an incredible card. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Oh yeah, it's a stupid spoiler thing, so you can't see it. But it's a very very flavorful card. Why is my computer slow? Here we go. It's ridiculous. 7 and 3 blue. You may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana costs. If this can hit play and not be countered, most decks will win. It works in tangent also with Tamiyo's final ability, which if you're running a mono blue or 2-color deck, maybe even a 3-color deck, is a pretty interesting. Sorry, got cut off. Yeah, so Omniscience I think is pretty scary. I think it stands a nice chance of being banned just because it's such an incredible card that can be abused so crazily in EDH. Insanely crazy. I don't think the cost is enough to make what it does less powerful. It's just absolutely insane. And I'm sure someone is going to break it somewhere and make it mind-bogglingly broken. I think it's really cool and I'll definitely be trying it out. But I can see it possibly being banned. It's just that powerful. I guess we'll have to see what happens with it though. Then next card was Switcheroo, sorry. Switcheroo. Switcheroo I think is interesting. It's 4 and 1 exchange control of 2 target creatures. So pretty much what it does it's obviously not as good as a card like Gilded Drake or any of the other Phyrexian Infiltrator, any of the other cards where you exchange control of a really weak card for a really powerful card. I still like it though, because if you have, you'll inevitably have some utility guy out, a small dude on the field who's 1/1 or 2/2 or something that did what he was supposed to do or does not that powerful, and being able to take control of a super powerful creature is really nice. Obviously, it can't target Shroud or Hexproof, so it's not insanely crazy, but it's still pretty bonkers to steal someone's Primeval Titan or something. And for a 5 cost, it's basically a mind control. It just requires that you give them a small creature. So I think that's kind of interesting, and there are options for it out there. Just kind of interesting EDH card. Actually, that was a switcheroo one. Here we go. All right, next with black, we have Diabolic Revelation, which is 3 and 2 black and X. Search your library for X cards, put them in your hand. So it's a scaled demonic tutor, pretty much is what it is. We had Increasing Ambition, everyone's comparing it to, of course. And for me, I might actually like it better than Increasing Ambition, but I really would have to play test it because I like that it scales. Mono black decks with massive ramp, which they almost all have, I think that the scaling part is really powerful. In black or black-blue decks that run combo heavy for an instant win, it's obviously insane because you ramp up and turn 4, 5, 6, whatever, you get your combo pieces in one shot and then you win. So I think that's pretty insane. But it, of course, does not have flashback. It runs the risk of if you counter it, then and you paid a lot for it, then you're stuck. Whereas Increasing Ambition, you can just a couple turns later play it again and get more, double. So I'm not sure I love it yet. I think I will be. Definitely will be playtesting with it. I think it could be powerful, especially in a format with such mana, because you can scale and refill your hand even with it. Fill your hand with things you need. You can scale it and pay 12 mana and get a bunch of cards you need. So it's definitely interesting, and I will be playtesting it. Nefarox, Overlord of Grixis, is next. He's 4 and 2 black for a 5/5, legendary demon. Flying Exalted, when he attacks alone, defending player sacrifices a creature. So he's just a nice beater, I think. He's another, he's kind of interesting. The Flying Exalted means that if you play him out on his own, he pumps himself up. If he's, he wouldn't really be doing much if he wasn't attacking. The Exalted obviously is a powerful mechanic in non-EDH formats. It's very hard to do a good Exalted deck in EDH, although I've seen some people try. So Nefarox, I like that when he attacks, he's flying evasion, and he's pretty powerful for his cost. So he's definitely powerful as a general. There's no question. He's a very strong aggro Voltron general, without a doubt. He pumps himself a little bit, he has evasion, and he can kill opponents' creatures. And if they only have one, he obviously can kill that and not be blocked. So I like that he chips away at your opponent. And that's really cool. The art's also awesome. As a regular card in the deck, the Exalted doesn't really matter as much, I think, in a regular deck. So really he's 6 for a 5/5 flying. The Exalted's kind of whatever. And his ability is really nice. Obviously, it's non-specific. They choose the creature to sacrifice, but really it's all value. It's all value. So I think he's a really monstrously good card. Definitely be thinking about him in my mono black deck, but I think that he'd be a really interesting general as well for Voltron. So I might even try him out in a general slot. Next we have Krenko Mob Boss, kind of the same thing. He's a pretty interesting general. He's 2 and 2 red for a 3/3 that taps to put X 1/1 red goblins or X number of goblins you control. So obviously Goblin Tribal, which tends to be mono red, but Goblin Tribal loves this card without a doubt. As a general, he obviously is not that strong in that he's not as protected, so he's more of a supportive card. He doesn't have a lot of evasion. He's not going to be a Voltron, but the fact that he's fairly cheap, he's 4 mana to play, and he really ramps your army like mad in EDH, I think that's really strong. So he's a pretty decent general, I think, although he might be better in the deck itself. He's not as good as the black guy, Nefarox, as a general, but still pretty cool card. Then we have Magma Quake. Magma Quake is a wrath spell, which I think, except it doesn't hit flying. But what I like about it is that it hits planeswalkers. I think it in fact might be the first wrath spell that kills planeswalkers, that hits planeswalkers. Most wrath spells in EDH have the problem, and that unless they say destroy permanents, like each player sacrifices all color permanents, all is dust. Unless it's something like that, it doesn't hit planeswalkers. I mean, most of the biggest bombs in the format don't touch planeswalkers, which is ridiculously frustrating. Someone plays a planeswalker, you clear the field, they have board control. This card takes care of that. So I think it's a really strong card, and mono red decks for sure will be grabbing this up, and I think many other decks might too. I think that it's very, very strong, especially in decks that Dragon Tribal, for example, that run flying. Definitely a card you want. Keep your board alive, kill everyone else. Then what I thought was interesting was Mindclaw Shaman. 4 and a red for a 2/2, so he's utility. Of course, he's not going to be doing anything on his own. But when he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You may cast an instant or sorcery from it without paying its mana cost. That's very nice. In EDH, with all these big spells out there, you have a very high chance of hitting it out of the ballpark. I mean, if you have four players at the table and everyone has their full hands, and assuming you have a way of looking at their hand even beforehand, you can imagine how crazy it's going to be. But you basically steal a spell out of their hand and play for free. I think he's great. For an uncommon utility, I think he could definitely be something very interesting, especially out of a mono red deck where you don't expect people to be running to take control of their opponents. So I think that's really cool. Definitely a good card. Keep an eye on it, for sure. Thundermaw Hellkite. I was talking to my friend today, actually, about Thundermaw. It's going to be an absolute beast in decks that run flying generals. So Kalia and Scion are the two decks that my friend's running, and both of them run a flying general. So this card is the bomb. It's insane. It's so good. It's a flying haste 5 for a 5/5, so it's all value right up front. But when he enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. So it kills tokens if it's played early enough. That's kind of the reason why in Standard it's going to be insane. But it taps those creatures. So in EDH, where there's not as much tokens, in tokens, you might have strong tokens, like a bunch of 3/3s, but even in decks that just have flying, it taps their guys. So he hits play, you get a free attack, your general doesn't have to worry about being blocked and being stopped. And if you're playing a deck that runs Voltron, that's insane. So this card, it's going to be really good, I think, in Standard as well, and of course other formats, but I think in EDH it's also an absolute bomb in the right deck. Worldfire. Worldfire is hilarious. So, obviously, I think it runs a risk of being banned, much the way Sway the Stars did, because it resets the game every 1-on-1. But at the same time, I have to say I kind of like it. It kind of deserves the splash. If it lands, it's a sudden death. And I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, it'll frustrate a lot of people and be banned in many metas, even if they don't ban it officially. But Worldfire, I think at least a couple times it would strike you as fun, and it's a fun card. I think it's kind of very different for a Wrath. It's not as annoying as Obliterate and Decree of Annihilation, because it sets everyone on a completely equal scale. Everyone's on one. It's kind of an interesting thing to do to EDH where decks tend to be slower. I'd like to see how that plays out in the future. Next up, I was looking at Boundless Realms. I actually don't think it's that good because you need to have a lot of lands. It's obviously a massive ramp spell, so Green will like it, but I'm not sold. I'm not sold on it. They hit play tapped, and it's basic lands, so not sold. Then Yeva, obviously she's gonna be a general card for mono green decks. I'm sure people will find ways to abuse her, and she's all value 4/4/4/4 flash. She has no protections though and no evasion. She won't be an aggro general likely, but I think her ability could be really used to effect in the right deck, specifically Elf Tribal. And lastly, this is going to come out of nowhere actually. Sands of Delirium is X and tap, put the top cards into the library. So the fact that it's X means if you can make an infinite spell, then infinite in mill, then they'll kill their deck. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching.